Hello and welcome to the Lightbeam Hour. This is a program designed to provide a forum for masterful teachers to share their individual messages and wisdom and to help people all over the world expand, heal, and awaken their lives. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Cecily MacArthur, and I am the creator and host of the Lightbeam Hour. So let me just introduce myself a little bit. I am a spiritual teacher, a life coach, a life mastery consultant, and a writer. And my mission is to help people connect with spirit, to awaken to their authentic self, and discover their true purpose and create the life of their dreams. So I'm very excited here tonight, or this afternoon in Massachusetts, to have a wonderful guest with me. And let me start by introducing Carolyn to you. So Carolyn Thomas she's an architect and a certified pyramid feng shui consultant. And she resides in New York City, New York. And she's practiced architecture in the U.S. and the Dominican Republic and has been involved in a wide range of design disciplines, including 20 years of designing trade shows, exhibits in the U.S. and Caribbean and Europe. So Carolyn has discovered feng shui in 1997. She's going to talk to you about that and about pyramid feng shui and how she got certified and became a board member and is very active in this community. And then she's going to also talk about her book, which is called Change Your Sheets, Change Your Love Life. And that is the title of what we're going to do today. So we're looking at some simple shifts to align yourself to relational bliss. So this is a very popular topic. We're very excited to bring this to you today and to have an opportunity to learn about this whole new way. And I spent some time with Carolyn, and she did some work with me, and I'm very excited about changing my love life through this. So I'm really thrilled to bring her to you today. So, Carolyn, welcome.
Thank you so much, Cecily. I am so excited to spend this hour with all of your guests. It's going to be fun.
Well, all right. Will you start then by telling us a little bit more about how you went from being an architect to a feng shui master?
Well, as you mentioned, I spent 20 years doing trade show design and finally was doing trade show exhibit sales and was driving to work one day and asking myself that eternal question, is this all there is? And I got the message, and, as we all get messages in the most curious way through an ad on the radio for a very, short little seminar on feng shui. And I signed up for it and just knew that was the life path that I needed to follow. It just really took everything that I love to do, which is helping people, and it just guided me down this brand new path. And as we all know, when we do what we love, we never work a day in our life.
I love that, absolutely.
Yep. So yeah, that was basically, and I was very fortunate. I know you mentioned something about, that I do pyramid feng shui. I think we all are attracted to things that align with us, deep down inside, and pyramid feng shui is a very scientific, westernized look at feng shui, and it just related to me. I always need to know why. I can't just do things because some Chinese person millions of years ago said it. No, I always have to know the why of things, and that's what attracted me so much to pyramid feng shui, because it is very much based on human reactions and law of attraction, and the why of things.
So can you distinguish the difference then? If people are familiar with feng shui, you said it was more Western. In what way then? Tell us a little bit more about that.
The most important difference that I found is that when I do, when I work with somebody's interior spaces, I always use everything they already have around them. I don't introduce any elements that are foreign to them. For example, I love anything that has to do with Asian art and Japanese things, but not, maybe 1 out of 100 clients might share that love. If you like French provincial, well, use your French provincial, because really feng shui is about putting up billboards around yourself that keep you focused on your dreams and your goals and your ambitions. And what better way than to put things up that really connect with you and keep your mind connected to, that outcome.
So it sounds like it's a little more flexible, that it will fit more of a Western lifestyle, or can be customized. So people, if they're, like you said, they're not into Asian decor, they still can use the elements of it to change the energy in their environment. So that's terrific.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Let's move into the aspect that the call is about, which is, getting to the love life stuff, because that's what everybody wants to hear about. So let's go right into your book and think about where did that title come from? I love that. Tell us the story about that.
It's so interesting because I think we all are put on this planet with a life path, and mine has been to understand relationships. It's been a long life lesson. And a few years ago, when I had been practicing feng shui for a while and thought I was doing everything exactly the way I was supposed to be doing it, I happened to end a relationship on Valentine's Day and decided to put some red satin sheets on my bed as a happy Valentine's Day to me. And energetic things started happening that I just did not understand. And if anybody that's on the call understands about feng shui and how red is just this fire element, it really created a shift in my bedroom. And one night I went to sleep thinking, there's something going on in here that I don't understand. And literally I had the message the following morning, and it was that my bed was in what's called the ancestors quadrant or community quadrant in pyramid feng shui. And so I was technically putting out the message or the energy that I was sleeping in red satin sheets with my neighbors and my grandparents. And of course, energetically, that is not what I wanted at all.
Not the plan, no.
No. And yet my bed was technically following all of the precepts that I had learned in terms of feng shui up until that point. So it really created this shift in my mind about, what an incredible purpose where you put your bed, really has in your love life. And, obviously took me down a path of, because of that logical brain that I have, of doing hundreds of surveys and asking questions and finding out how that bed placement relates to where you are on your love life path. And it was incredible. It truly was. It was eye-opening. And that's what got me to decide to write the book.
Excellent. Well, when we worked together, we worked on an element test. And will you talk a little bit about how that works along with the colors and the placement of the furniture and even the location of the bedroom? You were talking about this, and we'll go more into the details of that. But start with explaining the element test, and because you mentioned fire. So what are the other elements, and why is this important for us to consider?
Well, all of us, as you remember when we did your element test, we all have the 5 feng shui elements in different gradations within our personalities, whether it's our outward personality when we're in public or our private personality, which is the one that we really want to talk about when we talk about, bedroom feng shui. And when we have a partner that comes into our life or that is already in our life, for those people that, are already in a relationship, both of those elements and those personalities add together. So when I feng shui a space, whether it's for someone that's by themselves or that already has a partner living in that space, I have to look at who they are individually and what's going on within their space so that they do have a correct balance. A great example of this is, and it's chapter 6 of the book, a dear friend who, did everything, made all of the changes, attracted this wonderful man to her life. I'm so sorry. I'm having a call come in. And they ended up, once he actually started to come into her life on a more, prominent way, they started to have problems in their love life. And we immediately did element testing on both of them and found that they both had a lot of fire element in their personalities, and her interior spaces had a lot of red decor. And from the moment we took out all of that red decor, or the most prominent parts of it, you could feel the energy shift in the space, and they instantly, it was incredible how they felt differently, and that those bursts of fire were no longer causing issues in their relationship.
So you could overdo the red.
Yes. Red is a very intense element, an intense color, and so we have to be careful. We have to have just the right amount of fire, and it depends very much on who each of us are. You know, when we don't have any fire in our personality, then we can take a little bit more of it within our spaces. But when we are a very fiery, energetic person, then watch out, or you'll have a bonfire in the bedroom, and you don't really want that.
So you're saying from the element test, everyone is a little different. So they go through, and it's like a multiple choice and things that fit. It's really kind of a personality test. It helps to see, based on who you are, where your elements are strong and which ones may be less strong, and then you would compensate that in your environment. Is that how it will? Is that a good explanation of how it works?
That's a great explanation. That's exactly how it works. And of course, as we go through life, this is why we can't just feng shui once. We have to continually, every 6 months, every year, take that test again and see where we are, because we all evolve and change. When you do the test, for example, a young mother of small children may not need outside exercise. She may not have a really great need for going to the gym, because she already has these children that are giving her all of that fire element energy. But, maybe someone that's 40, 45, whose children are already grown up, suddenly decides that they need a little bit of exercise. It becomes more prevalent and important in their life, which means that they're willing to take on, within themselves, that fire element. So it varies depending upon, it's a snapshot of the right now when we do an element test.
I didn't think about that, because some of the things that tests you take, they say you should kind of stay that way on your whole life. So this would definitely vary depending on what's going on for you, and that you would want to take it over, and because your needs would change over time. That makes sense.
Yes. And I've had many clients that, we've feng shuied one home, and a year later have purchased a new home, and we've retaken a test, and they've already made shifts because, as we all know, knowledge just, turns that light bulb on, and once you know what your elements are, especially, the challenged side of the elements, which we all have a little bit of those sometimes, then we have the opportunity for change. And for growth and for more wisdom in our lives. So, yeah, it does change.
All right. Well, I love the idea, and I love taking the test, and it was really interesting to see, how the who I am came out in the elements, and your recommendations. So let's walk through some of the topics in your book, and then we can sort of tie in some of the things that you did for me in my element tests, and some things I definitely want to make changes in. So you started out when I love the title of your first chapter is Does Your Fire Ignite His Wood? So let's talk about that in terms of what did you mean by that, and how does that relate to feng shui?
Well, that is completely connected to those elements, because when one person has a lot of fire element in their personality, and yet their partner has maybe a lot of wood element, the element of flexibility, it may sound really great on paper, but, at the end of the day, you may be exhausting that other person and burning them out, and that's something that's going to be very important when we get to the bedroom. And the bedroom is really the place for having a loving relationship, or re-energizing and sleeping, and preparing yourself for the next day. So all of those things that are happening in your bedroom as they relate to the elements of whether you're by yourself or desiring a relationship in your life, or are already in one, all of that needs to be in what we call a dynamic balance. so that you don't become static in that balance. It's not a dead we live no longer balance. It's a very dynamic ebb and flow kind of balance. So yes, we do have to be very careful when your fire ignites his wood element.
So if you're in a couple relationship, then it's important to do an element test for both of you to see how what changes you make in the bedroom that dynamic that you said is working for the two of you. So I didn't think about that also, that you definitely would want to make a balance on that and understand the elements from each individual and how that comes together, particularly in the bedroom. So that's very cool.
Yes, so because it's like adding together. It's completely like adding all of your elements together. And, I've seen couples where the husband might be a complement in terms of elements to the wife. And then you can see, or you see couples where they're very, very similar in their elements. And so depending upon all of that is where then we will, influence the bedroom to make sure, which way we're skewing, which way, what we're adding, what we're subtracting from the space.
So when you're talking about adding or attracting in the space, tell us more about I always think of it as feng shui as the bagua. People talk about a bagua and how to the positioning of the actual room in your home. Can you talk more about the bagua principles and how that is connected to your love life?
Yes. And actually, this is probably the most important topic of all of the discovery that I had through doing the surveys and as an architect looking back. There's a chapter in the book where I look all the way back to when I was 16 and what my spaces were like and what my relationships were like from that point forward. And believe me, I've been through many. So that was the most important topic, was to understand what part of the bedroom is your bed placed in, and where in your home is your bedroom placed really relates so directly to where you are on your love path. We see so many people who keep continually getting into relationships where one person makes more money than the other and it's a constant issue. Or we see people that get into relationships where one person is always kind of in charge of the relationship and having to, pull all the heavy lifting in the relationship. And many times those specific incidences relate to when someone has their bedroom in either the wealth quadrant or in the helpful people or compassion quadrant. And we see that unbalanced style of relationships. And what I really finally understood through all of this, study on the topic and surveys was that we each come in to learn these lessons in our life regarding relationships, regarding wealth, and the more we progress through that understanding and understanding ourselves and our self-worth and what we desire in a relationship, the closer and closer we get to really having the one of our dreams, the real one that we're all supposed to have, when we desire it. And so at the end of the day, the optimum placement for that bedroom and that bed is the bedroom should be in the relationship area or marriage area of the bagua in a home, and the bed should be in the future area, which means it's like telling the universe, this is what I want for the rest of my, my being on this planet is to be in this relationship, and the bed is the energetic symbol of that relationship.
So Carolyn, if I'm standing in my front door and I'm looking at my house, how would I know that the bedroom is in the relationship corner?
When you stand in the doorway and you're looking into your home, if your bedroom is on that same level as the front door, the far back right-hand corner is the relationship area of the floor plan. If you happen to have a home that's on 2 floors and your bedroom is upstairs, then do the same process but stand at the top of the stairs and look into that upstairs space and find that back right corner. And that is the optimum place. That is the relationship quadrant, and where your bedroom should be.
Okay, so now you've got the bedroom location. So now how do you know where the future Bagua place is in the bedroom? You're standing in the doorway of the bedroom, and where would that be?
Yep, absolutely. So as you know, when we look straight ahead, we are walking towards our future. The same thing happens when we stand in the doorway and look into our bedroom. That wall that is opposite the wall of the door and the center of that wall is the future quadrant.
Okay. All right. So, what would happen if people's bedroom is not located there? Is there a way? I mean, that's the ideal, right? So,
yes, that's the optimum and the ideal. And in feng shui, we don't always work with optimums. If everything was always optimum, there would be no need to do ever any feng shui. So that is the optimum and ideal, to have the bedroom in that quadrant and to have the bed in that future quadrant. When our bedroom happens to not be in that placement, then we have to look inside ourselves and start to analyze, where is our bedroom? For example, I had a client, and in the book I talk about all of these clients and do various vignettes and lots of little drawings and sketches, so it's easy to follow along. But I did have a client whose bedroom was in the wealth area. And when you walked into her bedroom, the only real optimum place to put her bed was on what's called the self wall, her identity. In the other feng shuis, you might consider it, I think it's the career. I'm not entirely sure, but in pyramid feng shui, it is that wall, it's the center of the wall where the entrance door to the bedroom is. And it was so interesting because every relationship that she had had up until that point completely was, fizzled away due to financial and wealth issues. Either they didn't make enough, or there was always a financial issue. And once she found that out, and we did the feng shui of her bedroom, she is actually now in the process of spending more time. That house was in Florida, and she's now in the process of spending much more time at a cabin in North Carolina, where the bedroom is in the relationship quadrant. So it's so law of attraction based that once we move past and understand what we truly desire in a relationship, it's like our eyes are opened, and then things start to happen that just get us moving to that next step and to that place where we're supposed to be.
So there are some things that you can, even if it's in the wrong location, you can compensate for that, at least temporarily.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. There's some basic things that I, tell everybody across the board, and you can read it also in my book. And it's very similar in most of the other styles and schools of feng shui. Most importantly is to have a bed that fits two people. Don't sleep on a single bed. Don't have a king-size bed, because that also creates, other issues as well. But do have either a double or a queen-size bed. Have two nightstands. I've come to the conclusion that they don't necessarily have to match. They don't have to be identical, but you have to look inside yourself and decide what kind of a relationship you desire. Do you want a matchy-matchy? Do you want to be both identical? Or do you enjoy having that, that dynamic of being very different? So you'll look at that as well on those two nightstands. And then most importantly as well, in what's the relationship quadrant of your bedroom, make sure you have images of you and that person, or, pairs of things that keep reminding you that what you desire is to have, to be in a couple scenario.
And so when you say pairs of things, like, is it okay?
It can be two candles.
Okay.
two candles. It can be an image, for example, if you don't have someone in your life that you really care for already. There are images like the Kiss by Klimt. I actually have a client who's now married who that was the image she put into her relationship quadrant. There are beautiful statues of that you can tell are a man and a woman, even though they you don't actually see someone in particular. There's lots of things that you can put into that relationship area that will click your brain on and continue to keep you on that path of attraction towards wanting to be in that relationship.
So it's just a question, because I know in my room I had a lot. They were more like figures of like two little birds, or I had a Chinese symbol that was supposed to be love, which was supposed to be two birds in a more of an abstract pattern, and some things that weren't necessarily human. Is that okay? I mean, you're just saying it's pairs that makes the difference.
It's always preferable to have something that reminds you of two people.
Okay.
So, I always think, because feng shui sometimes tends to be very literal, and our brain is very literal. So if you do have two birds, then, the message you're putting out is that you maybe want to be birds of a feather. And so there's nothing wrong with that per se, but always check to see how that image or those objects are resonating with your message. How are they connecting to the message that you really want to be sending out?
And so in that case, then I'm saying that thinking of the opposite. Then you wouldn't want like I had a candlestick that was just a single woman. So you don't want anything that's just would be one person all by themselves.
Absolutely not, or any images that are just of a single person. Yes, because when you look around your bedroom, check everything that's in there. Make sure. When I talk about what I call physical and energetic alignment of your space, which you can do through colors, through objects, through images, there's an addition and there's a subtraction. To be energetically aligned, sometimes you have to subtract a few things. Like images of children in the bedroom. That's a no-no. Objects that remind you of your parents. Not a good idea. Things that are that don't relate completely and directly to your desire with your partner have energy. Everything has energy. And so you need to make sure that the message you are sending out within your space really relates and resonates with that message you want to send out. I see so many people that get divorced or were in a long-term relationship that is no longer, and yet they keep the same bed and the same mattress. And, I actually had a client, we tried to do a space clearing on a mattress from a relationship that was very, very abusive. And I can tell you that what I felt in my arm as I was sometimes when I do space clearing, I may use a small little bell. And it felt like I was dragging a 200-pound bell as I went around that bed trying to do some energy clearing. So, we don't really always think about those things, but our brain is always connected to those subconscious messages. And when it is, it just, may mean that we haven't really prepared ourselves to let go of that relationship, and maybe that's where we need to do a little bit more work before we can move forward.
So definitely clear out anything from the exes.
Exactly. Nothing from the exes.
I love that. All right, get rid of that stuff, or at least move it out of the bedroom. Now,
yes.
How about color, Carolyn? What if we're optimizing the color? I know that would vary depending on the elements, but tell us a little bit more about some of the things that you would recommend around colors.
Color, actually, it's very interesting because, as you say, I usually, when I do recommendations with color, it is completely based on, the person's elements. But there is a big no-no when it comes to color, and it's what I recommend to never have. The walls of a bedroom where we are desiring a relationship, a loving relationship, should never be blue. Nothing in the blue, cold, watery depths of, because blue is actually a color that makes you become an introvert, go inside yourself. So we don't want that in a bedroom. In a bedroom, we really, truly want to be connected to that person that's with us. And the water element does the opposite. So never have everybody that's on the call that has blue walls, talk to me because that's the wrong color. Definitely paint over it. And obviously in the book there is the element test that deals just with that side of your personality, which is the private personality. But on my website, and we can talk about that later, is a full element test that you can take that talks about both sides of your expressed and your hidden personality. And it's always good to see, as you know, when you took your test, it's quite eye-opening to see it. It's kind of a confirmation of who you are, but at the same time, it just opens your eyes to the possibilities.
So let's talk about what the colors for me and what happened in the bedroom, say, what the elements test actually indicated for it. So I thought it was very interesting that, you would, for the balance of the elements for me, you talked about violets or pinks, and that was a predominant color in my bedroom, definitely. So could you talk a little bit more about, why that was? And you said, no, you definitely no gold or greens. Just explain a little bit how it worked with what the results of my test were.
Yeah. Well, your test was so interesting because, remember, in your outward personality, you were very, very, very balanced in terms of all of your elements were, kind of had the same degree. When we went to your private, your hidden personality, you were very predominantly earth element. And so when we have so much earth element, we have to be careful in the bedroom to not have oversized furniture or heavy or dark wood or, colors that are very earth element, like browns or tans or, golds or those mustard yellows or terracottas. So when we looked at the rest of your test, and we saw that, you didn't have a lot of metal or a lot of wood, and fire, you were, pretty balanced in water. But when we looked at that, we said, let's try to overcome a little bit of all of this earth element by using, a little bit of fire on your walls or, maybe mixed with a little bit of water. And that's how we came up with, some lavenders and things like that.
Which is what I love anyway, and was what I was doing. So interesting how some people do just naturally come to this. Do you think there are people that
everybody, I'll be honest with you, everybody, whether they realize it or not, does through their clothing, through what kind of objects they have in their space, does try subconsciously to balance and react in terms of where they are in their elements. As I mentioned when we talked about the element test, anybody that has gone through a major life trauma, a loss of a job, a divorce, a death, will tend to want to hibernate and will tend to find those colors and those whether it's in their clothing or in the objects around them, that help them to kind of go underground for a little while. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that until we overdo it, until we get to the place where we don't know how to dig ourselves out of that hole. And that's when a feng shui expert comes in, because we're the catalyst. We're that person that can give you that extra little shove in the right direction that'll get you to realize that, you need some help and you need some new direction and encourage you to take those steps and to, make those changes.
And I think that it's amazing that there is, as you said, as you're going to vary depending on where you are in your life, and that you can make changes just with what you put in your environment. So can you talk more about why would we care about the environment that we're in? Where does that come from in terms of attracting what we want? Why is that so important?
Well, I'll actually give you a wonderful example of the why through a client that I had about a year ago. She actually was among one of the swimmers at one of these big theme parks where her fellow diver was killed by a whale, the killer whale. And she had also recently ended an engagement, had had to move to a new space. So she was really in a very depressed situation in her life, did not know how to pull herself out of that. And had actually, in this new space, and with the help of her mother, had decided to paint all the walls blue in her space. Well, when we did her element test, it was it was just a revelation, because I knew that in general I would never have painted a bedroom blue if we want to be in a relationship, but this went even deeper. She was basically drowning, that was her job, was to be in the water, but going through all of this trauma, she actually was drowning within her own space. And when we saw the elements and what she had done to her room, it was just so evident. And so the most important change that we made to her room, aside from aligning her furniture into the correct placement and all of that, was to paint her walls. We did leave one of the walls painted blue, because it was a little bit of her identity, but we painted the 3 remaining walls of her room kind of what was it? It was more of like a pomegranate kind of a color, very luxurious, burgundy pomegranate. And it was, the change in her was outstanding. Another great example of that, and this isn't really relationship oriented, but so many of us are moms with kids going off to school. I had a client who was a 16-year-old who had been having horrible trouble with school, had to drop out of school. They were homeschooling her, and the mother came to me and said, we really want her to go and complete her senior year of high school, in school, so she can have her prom and all of that. And we did her element test, and she had a lot of fire element in her personality. And this was before I even saw her bedroom. And when I walked into her bedroom and saw that all of the walls were bright pink, I thought, well, no wonder this poor child cannot concentrate, she can't stand to be in her space long enough to study. And all we did was change the color of her walls. We did a little bit of a Tiffany blue on some of the walls, because blue, as I mentioned earlier, is, it makes you go inside yourself and concentrate. And we did a little bit of also lavender on one of the walls. And it was amazing. She graduated from high school, is now off to college. The change was, I don't call it miraculous, because I know how our spaces affect us so amazingly. So, it's one more of the things that make me happy to do what I do, because when I do see those changes, in people's lives, it just confirms so much about, how important our space is.
Those are great examples of how just shifting color made a huge difference for people, and so we don't even think about that we just sort of do what we like, but don't necessarily know that we are actually affecting all of who we are, and our ability to concentrate, or our ability to attract what we want, our ability to even to be happy versus depressed. So
yeah,
really cool. That's amazing. So thinking about other things that you talk about in your book, is you talk about the we letter. Will you explain to us what that is?
Yes. Oh, my goodness. Well, the most important thing, because feng shui is one aspect, where you place things is so important, but there's so much more to it than just, where am I going to put my bed and what are my elements. There's the aspect of what do I really, really want in a relationship, what do I truly in my heart desire for that partner that I'm trying to attract to myself. And this is where I, completely go into the law of attraction portion of changing your sheets to change your love life, because that we letter is precisely that. It's your love letter to that person that does exist, that is out there, or that may be in your life already and that you just need to, figure out and hone a little bit better and make those small little changes. But it is that. It's your love letter to that person that you desire in your life.
So can you describe more about how would somebody do this? What would it look like?
What my normal steps for a we letter are to just tell folks to, grab a notepad and put it on your nightstand, and every time an idea pops into your head about what you really desire in that partner, jot it down. Jot it down. Keep jotting down until you cannot think of anything more to write on that list. And then once you've gotten to that point where you know exactly, what those things are, then, put some little numbers next to it. Prioritize. Figure out what is the most important part about that entire list that you've made. And then once you've gotten to that point where you really are organized and in your mind you have asked yourself all of the questions you need to ask yourself, do you want someone who likes kids? Do you want, all of those deep questions, which I actually, really go through in the book as well. Once you get to that point, then you're ready to write that we letter. And then and that's when, as we know in law of attraction, write that letter in the present tense. Tell that person, I love you because you are this, and I love being with you because we do this. And, really write all of it out in that present tense as though it is really happening right now. Because that is what is going to click your brain on to really attract that into your life. And I've done it so many times that I know that within seconds it works. And thankfully can proudly say that I know exactly when and how things come, people come into your life at the precise moment, and for that path through learning, that we all have to go through. Some of us take longer than others. But yes, and then of course, last but not least, make sure that letter, once it is written and you've got it down on paper, don't be afraid to make changes to it, because you might attract that person and then suddenly you remember that you forgot something. So it was something that you forgot to put on that list. So don't be afraid to rewrite and find that next person that matches even better than the one before. But once you do have that letter, put it in the right place, put it in that relationship quadrant within your bedroom, because that's also setting that energetic intention to attract that person to you.
All right. So it's really important process to go through. I really love that. So you're making the notes first, and once you've got all the notes, you write the letter as if it's already happening with the law of attraction. And we always say blue ink on white paper.
Which I love that. I did not know that. I loved that that you mentioned, because now I've gotten rid of all of my black pens.
I have to go buy blue pens too. It's funny how we don't even think about the color of the ink, but hey, we're talking about color and attraction here, so definitely think about that. And then tell it again. Remind people, when you said putting it in the relationship bagua in their bedroom.
Yes,
where would that be? And so how would they?
So when you stand in the doorway looking into your bedroom, that far right-hand corner, that is your relationship area. And if you happen to have the nightstand in that corner, put it in the top drawer of your nightstand. Or, if you have a beautiful image of a loving couple on the wall, stick it behind the image. But, definitely set your intention, no matter where you put it within that relationship quadrant, set that intention that is what you desire to attract.
I love that. I think that's terrific. You put it out there, and then you also know it's a work in progress. You can edit it as you learn more about what you want, or you change your mind. So that's terrific.
As I mentioned in the last chapter of my book, you can change your sheets until you do change your love life. Don't be so afraid that you've set it in stone that's it, and you'll never have a shot at it again. It is a work in progress.
That's great. I love that. So let's just think about sort of wrapping this up and thinking about telling people about their path to love. What would you recommend then for people to go if they were going to find their path to love?
You know, the most important thing is as I mentioned earlier, do look at where your bedroom is, and, you know, do understand what it's relating to within your love life, you know, and why are you there? Because once you get that light bulb turned on, and I can tell you there are people that have been doing feng shui for a long time. The lady that founded the school that I belonged to, that I studied through, was not following the principles that I put in this book and is, you know, now divorced, and yet other people that are doing feng shui are following this and have been married for 46 years. So it's definitely something that is grounded in a truth that is almost surprising to me, because as I found this information and when I finally actually sat down to write the book, it flowed through me in a way that I encourage other people to decide to write. My fingers just did the typing, and I can't even, I knew what I was typing about, but it was just such a magical experience to have all of that information flow out your fingertips. It really was impressive.
That's great. I think, and I've experienced that in writing when you're connected to spirit and they want you to say something to the world. It's amazing how well it will come through. And then you read it back and you go, "Wow, I wrote that."
Yes. Oh my goodness, absolutely. And the most impressive thing is, and I think I mentioned it to you when we spoke a few days ago, is how every time there was an opportunity to stop mid-chapter, there was always a new message that came to enhance whatever I happened to be writing about at that moment. So it truly was a complete connection to spirit and to allowing and to being in that flow.
Well, it's an amazing book and amazing work that you do. Can Carolyn please tell everyone, about your practice and how they can get in touch with you and what's going on with that they might be interested in knowing about?
Well, Change Your Sheets, Change Your Love Life is available on Amazon.com. You can contact me also through my website, which is Feng Shui Architect, ARQITECT.com. The book is also in Spanish. If there happen to be any callers today that are on the call that prefer to read the book in Spanish, I had a lot of fun. I do speak Spanish and had a great Spanish editor, so we did do the translation. And that one, Cambia tus sábanas, cambia tu vida amorosa, is also available on Amazon.com. And I'm very excited because within the next few weeks, we're going to be creating a television show in Spanish based on the book, and I'm really excited about that. So, and who knows, maybe in the near future we'll be creating it in English as well. So I'm very excited.
I think that's amazing. I'm really excited about that for you also. So just want to make sure that people know the website again. So it's...
Yes, Feng Shui, FENGSHUI, Architect, ARQITECT.com.
Thank you. Great. All right.
And you can also follow my blog, which is also Feng Shui Architect. I love writing. I love people getting in touch with me on Facebook as well, Carolyn Thomas on Facebook. And if you Google Carolyn Thomas Feng Shui, you will find a lot of stuff about me, so feel free. You'll find my blog, you'll find my Twitter, all of those wonderful social networking sites that we have available to us nowadays.
And you are available, and great blogs. I've read several of them, and tremendous information for people too to learn more about this topic. So that's great. So what I wanted to do now, Carolyn, is let's just see if there are some questions for you from our audience. So if you are on the phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *2 on your phone. That will raise your hand, and I will see that on the board here, and I will unmute you and identify you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. If you are on the webcast, there should be a little box on the left-hand corner, and you can write any of your questions in that box, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time. So please type away or raise your hands, and let's ask Carolyn any specifics about your love life or to learn more about what we've talked about here today. All right. I got one hand up here. Hold on a second. I'm unmuted. All right. I think this is Sheila. Hello.
Just one hand, and it was mine.
Hello. It had to be.
How you doing, Cecily?
I'm doing great, Sheila. Good to hear your voice.
I came in a little bit late, but here's my deal. I lost a soulmate and have grieved for a year, and the last 6 months kind of refocusing, and now I'm open to meeting someone, and men are showing up all over the place, which always happens to me, and I'm not really sure what this is about my life, except that I grew up with brothers. I'm very open to men. I don't judge them. And I think I throw out very positive energy, and I'm pretty naive, so I'm more open than maybe a lot of people. This is the deal. My bedroom is painted green, and my deceased boyfriend painted the bedroom, put the dresser together, but I'm not really connected to that. The bedroom's green. I have a veil over my bed, and I have hearts hanging from from the ceiling. There's two men that have shown up right now. One is, they're both beautiful, both available. One's 50, Irish, from South Boston, and the other one is 59, a beautiful man that I met walking on that beach, Cecily. And so I'm like, okay, here's two, and both of them fit into every bit of criteria that I have for a match, and they're both available. So what do I do?
Okay, my first question to you would be, when we talked about the quadrants, did you hear at the beginning of the talk when we talked about the quadrants of the
Well,
podcast?
you said in the right-hand corner is the relationship corner.
Uh-huh.
That's where my closet is.
That's where your closet is, okay. but your bedroom is in that back right corner of the home, even though the closet is there?
Yes, it's in the back right corner, and I have a window that is in back, like onto the right side of the bed, and I don't use curtains. I leave everything opened.
Okay.
And I think my bed's in the right place. And is your bed in the
future? Your bed is in the future. Yeah,
because it faces the door, and it faces, the bed faces the door, and I think that's important to have the door facing, so the door's open for somebody to come in.
Exactly. See, this is why you're attracting these people into your life with such ease, because whether you knew it or not, when you attracted the last person, you were already in that perfect placement. So that's contributing to that ease of bringing people in. Now, there's something I talk about in the book, and it is when there is a closet or a bathroom or a little wash area or something in that corner, the actual real true corner of the relationship area, you need to question yourself if there is some kind of in the closet issue that you have not dealt with in your life. And think about it. Think really hard, because it's not that it's going to keep you from this next person in your life, but think about what that is, because once you clear that out, that's going to be very important to moving forward. The other thing is, I don't know how much you found out about both of these gentlemen, but I would find out personally to see which of the two has the bedroom in the relationship area. Because if
do I visit to find that out, or do they tell, or should I ask?
Well,
them
I would have them just draw it on a napkin.
Invite me over and let me figure out where your bedroom is, and then I'll decide which one's the right one.
That would be my recommendation. I would find out which of the two truly has the bedroom in the right place, and if possible, hopefully the bed in the right place. Because if they don't, you're going to find out something about them that may be the deal breaker. That might be the part that they're still stuck with either a financial or wealth issue or a compassion issue or, a past relationship issue. So because sometimes we say that we're ready, but we aren't necessarily ready. So, that would be my recommendation, would be to find out about them. Now, going back to the part about the green walls, if this was something that the past person in your life painted and had a lot of involvement in, I'd be very careful about that as well. But before I could say, paint over it with pink or blue or whatever color, I wouldn't venture to give you a color until I saw an element test. And once I saw the element test, then I would say I would go with this color on the walls.
Well, can I ask you one thing about the closet? Because the closet's kind of interesting. It doesn't have a door on it because I didn't put the door on it. And the closet is not reflective of who I have been fashion-wise through this lifetime. And my former boyfriend had a lot of problems with all the black in the closet because I don't have a lot of color. And actually, I had a job where I had to wear black suits, so I have like 8 black suits hanging in the closet. And there's a lot of black in the closet.
Well, what's interesting about that is something I told Cecily as well, because there are people that, that work in certain industries that do have to wear, very specific things on the outside. But I would encourage you to go to, Victoria's Secret. This is not a plug for them, but they're my favorite.
I have a whole drawer full of that stuff.
And buy lots of color. Wear lots of color underneath all that black. And
what I find myself doing is that, I'm a very, I love lace and frills and lace and stuff, so I've been, getting a few things that are, more reflective of my ruffles and feminine, that. So.
Sheila, we're going to move on, okay?
Yep, go. Thank you.
And feel free to give me to contact me, Sheila, because if you'd like to do that element test, I'd be happy to help you out with the color for the walls.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Sheila. All right, we have another caller, and I'm going to just try to figure this out because I've unmuted you, but there is no number on there, so it might be someone Skyping in, and I'm not sure who that is. So if somebody would...
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. All right. Excellent. What's your name, and what's your question for Carolyn?
Hello?
Hello? Go ahead. You're on.
I'm sorry. My name is Denise, and I just wanted to get the her website. I missed it when she was saying it.
Carolyn, the website, it's Feng Shui, FENGSHUI, Architect, ARQITECT.com.
ECT.com. Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, you're welcome.
You're welcome.
All right, so we do have a question on the webcast from Susan in Chicago. She wanted to ask about the effect of mirrors in the bedroom. And she also mentioned a cracked mirror being bad in general. So mirrors, I've heard a lot about that, Carolyn, and mirrors in the bedroom. What would you have to say about that?
Yes, mirrors, it's something that's pretty generalized across all of Feng Shui, that mirrors in the bedroom are not a good idea. And if it's a cracked mirror, even a worse idea. But the thing about mirrors that we have to remember is they're very powerful. Mirrors can multiply things. Mirrors can deflect things. They can cause a lot of energetic shifts. So when we have a mirror, for example, facing the bed, what we're doing is energetically we're multiplying the people in that bed. And that really isn't in alignment with what we want to create in our relationship life. If we just want us and a partner, then it's not a good idea to have a mirror that's facing the bed, because what we're saying is we want lots of people in the bed with us. So everything in your room has that energy, has an energy of meaning. So, look at everything in the bedroom and see what kind of energy it is sending back to you. And that goes really with your entire home. Everything has energy, whether it's historic energy because it reminds you of somebody or something or some event, or the energy of the elements, of the actual 5 elements of feng shui. So, yeah, mirrors in the bedroom, not a good idea.
Well, people have mirrors because they wanted to get dressed and see themselves. What would you recommend for mirrors then? If you do have them in the bedroom, how would you use them effectively?
Keep them in the bathroom and, or if there's a separate closet within, like a walk-in closet, then make sure the mirror is somewhere within your walk-in closet that on the back of the door of the walk-in closet, which that would multiply your clothing, which is always a good thing if you're a girl.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and always, with even in the rest of your home, look at where you do have mirrors and look at where you have reflective surfaces and see what they are reflecting back to you. Because we sometimes, multiply clutter. We sometimes multiply bad views from the outside. We multiply broken things. And, we don't need to multiply any negative things in our lives.
That's absolutely. Don't want to emphasize things we don't want, for sure.
Exactly.
So, all right. So this is we're going to wrap it up then here. Thank you all for questions and the participation. That's wonderful. And thank you, Carolyn, for great answers. And I would just like to turn it back to Carolyn. So what would be some final thoughts you would like to have for our listeners today about using the bedroom feng shui to transform their love life?
I think that all of us deep down inside, whether we say it out loud or not, we all want that perfect person or that partner that we're looking for. We all have that desire. It doesn't matter how old or young we are. We really all, want that to be attracted into our lives. And it's just a matter of you making that decision, coming to that place in your life where you are ready to question yourself and question what you truly desire. And once you figure that out, to take action and put yourself into alignment, through things like feng shui, which are, building that billboard of desire around you and, continue to move forward towards that goal.
Beautiful. And that's true. Everyone can benefit from that advice. So thank you so much, Carolyn. I truly appreciate your time here today and sharing so generously with so many wonderful ideas. And I learned some more, and it was fascinating. I highly recommend doing your element test with Carolyn and having her make some recommendations, because it is an amazing process to realize that you can, with shifting a few things, really make a difference in your life. So thanks again for being a great guest, Carolyn. And I just want to again thank people who are listening to here on the line today and or on the replay for participating in the Light Beam Hour. And just remember that right here, right now, all is truly well and that we are blessed. Bye now.
Thank you so much, Cecily.
You're welcome, Carolyn. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.